Okay, welcome to this is episode 4, Gabi, of the Footwear Intern podcast, and we're here. It's late at night. We're recording across the from Utah to Oregon, and we're gonna have a fun time. The Footwear Intern podcast, if you're a new listener, um, is a podcast meant to tell stories of individuals, professionals that have made it into the footwear industry and their path to get there. It's meant to share these stories to hopefully inspire or shed light on opportunities and ways to make the dream happen as far as becoming a footwear industry professional. And today we have Gabi. Gabi, we go back as you have a common thread with two of our previous podcast friends, and that we met at the University of Oregon in the sports product master's design program. So welcome to the pod. Super excited to have you here.
Excited to be here. Excited to chat.
Okay, Gabi. Well, we're gonna we've got some questions set. We'll get conversational as well. Um, but so right now we can say you're currently working in um, the
Fitness
exercise
equipment development.
fit. Okay, you're working in fitness equipment development. Prior to that, you were working in the footwear space. Can you? We're gonna like break down your path of getting there. Um, But let's just start off with who you are. Give an intro of who is Gabi to the listeners that don't know.
Sure. Well, I like to think of myself as a creative engineer. So, growing up, I was always interested in math and science, but also interested in art. And I feel like that was a little bit of a distinction from
Mm.
kind of a lot of my peers, especially throughout college. I did mechanical engineering, and I had so many classmates who were stoked on all of the classic engineering things. And my husband's an engineer, and he's like a classic engineer in terms of aerospace and automotive and um, kind of all these like hardcore mechanical products or theories. And while I enjoyed those topics, I feel like they didn't really speak to me in a way that it spoke to a lot of my peers. And so, um, I, like you said, I found the sports product design program, and that felt a lot more like me. I love sports. I played sports growing up, and there's something I find really special about athletes and helping them perform better or preventing injury or inspiring people to champion fitness in their lives or whatever it is. And sports products are my favorite products that exist. I really hate shopping, but I love going to like a DSG or any other kind of like sports product store. And those are the kind of products I've always loved to look at or be a part of. And so it's kind of how I found the program and weaseled my way into sports product design and development and engineering, which is kind of where I'm at now.
Cool. What was like? What were your sports? Where did you start? Let's say like your earliest recreational stage. Was it? Is it like the? Yeah. Where was Gabi getting on the pitch first, or what was it?
It was the pitch, it was soccer. I started playing soccer, I think I was like pre-K, like
Mm.
my parents threw me in like a little soccer camp in between school years, and then I started playing on a rec team, and I played soccer from like 6 up until I was competitively like through high school. And then in 3rd grade I started running track, and so I ran track all through high school. And then I had a shorter stint in basketball as well. I started basketball in 5th grade and played through my sophomore year of high school. I didn't quite finish that one out. Basketball is not as much my passion, But those were like my three sports that I played up through high school, and then I played every intramural I could play in college. I loved intramural sports and thought it was a really fun way to be still a little bit competitive, but be on a team with friends and get a lot of different experiences, like sports I'd never played, like volleyball or things like that. I played on like a pickleball team as well, and just a lot of like random sports that were fun and I wasn't always good at, but it was uh, good to be competitive again.
For sure. Did as you're growing up, playing different sports, trying different things, was there and well, this will be a two-part question, but was there ever any moment where you were like, oh, I could improve this, or oh, like I'm wearing this because I really like it, or um, like an acknowledgement for the equipment or the footwear you were using?
Like I always chose, I feel like my shoes based on the colors, which is
Mm,
like so classic, right? It's like, oh man, like let me get the brightest colored cleats I can get.
yeah.
And like my parents always told me they loved it. They're like, we love that you have the brightest cleats because we can see you easily on the field. And I was like, I, I don't know. I really liked it, and I didn't. I don't think I thought about it too much. I just picked what I thought looked cool and felt comfortable, and um, I didn't really know like how heavily footwear impacted me until later on when I started being a little bit more cognizant about it in grad school, and I was like, oh, like this is why I like these. Like this is why I like Nikes better, is because Nikes fit my foot really well because I have a really narrow foot compared
Mm,
to the average person. I have like a double A narrow foot,
wow.
like very, very narrow compared to the average person. And so like Nikes are notoriously like a little bit too narrow sometimes for people, but they fit me really well. Versus like my husband loves Adidas, and it's like, oh Liam, that's because you have a wider foot, and Adidas generally has like a wider last than Nike, so maybe that's why you like it. And so the more I discovered about different things, it was like, oh, this makes so much sense why I was always attracted to this, even though I said it was just for aesthetics. Like there was an actual reason why it felt better on my body.
Interesting. Okay, we're gonna get back to that. I have you grew up for the most part, or always in the like greater Portland area, correct?
Always in Portland. My parents have owned the same house my whole life. My grandpa built it, so like literally the same spot the whole
Cool.
time in Southwest Portland.
Did so growing up, and I think this is maybe different than um, others that I've talked with. Like, um, did you know people that worked at Nike, or did was that like something like even going to high school or your undergrad that it was like, oh, they're like did like maybe even like for me, I didn't have this like aha moment that like people were designing things or creating them until I was like years into college. You know, like did was that just something that was like, oh yeah, that makes sense because Nike's down the road? Is or I don't know, what was it like?
I feel like it should have been like I should have always known, but I don't think it really clicked for me, like you said, for quite a while. Like I knew people who worked at Nike. Everyone here, I feel like, knows someone. It's like, oh, such and such
Mm,
mom works at Nike, or so and so has a retail job at Nike. Like you know people who worked there, but I didn't really know what people did, and I didn't know anyone in design or engineering really. I actually like I didn't really know any engineers when I went into engineering. Um, and I didn't know what engineering meant when I did it. I didn't know like that you could do design really. Um, so yeah, I think it clicked for me like much later on when I was.
yeah.
I think a common theme for maybe a lot of people who went to our program was being a little bit dissatisfied with what their career options were, uh, graduating college or a couple years after college, and then um, hopping on Google and Googling like design, sports products,
Yeah.
master's program, question mark, question mark, question mark, and like it popping up with something. And I think that's when things started to click for me. It was like, oh my gosh, people like actually do this work and I could be a part of it. And I thought that's kind of about when it started happening, was like me Googling a bunch of stuff when I was like nearing the senior year of college. And I was like, what can I do with this degree that's a little bit
Yeah.
different than the traditional path?
Yeah. Okay, that's really cool. That's that's cool though that like you were around it enough that it was like then it clicked and you're like, oh, this is a like a feasible path. So you said, and maybe I missed. So did you say you when you went into engineering, um, what I guess what was like, so so you do high school, you do a lot of sports, you've got a love for sports. Um, why engineering then to start in your undergrad? What was the pull there?
So I distinctly remember like I loved sports. I was I would say playing casually for fun. Like I it was competitive. I played in varsity sports, but I wasn't going anywhere with it. And I kind of like made that decision like maybe I could have played at a D3 college, but like college in my opinion was like for education and it wasn't for like fun athletic experiences anymore, like maybe on the side, but it wasn't something that was gonna impact me for my future. And so like the goal was to focus in on education and um, my dad encouraged me to think about engineering and I was like, no, like I'm not going to do engineering. I don't even know what that is. And then I saw, it sounds so cheesy. I saw this commercial on TV and it was like, do you want to change the world? Become an engineer. And I was like, oh, like I want to change the world. Like maybe
Yeah.
I do want to be an engineer. And then I looked into it more and I toured a couple different engineering programs and it just seemed really ambiguous and like you can really do anything with it, but it was also super technical and math and science focused, but also you could do design or you could really do anything with it. And that's kind of what I was looking for was the ability to do whatever I dreamed up. And so that's kind of how I fell into engineering and found my way to mechanical engineering and thought about quitting a few times, but didn't. And ended up really liking it and really liking the friends I found along the way. And we all kind of inspired each other, I think, in different ways. And then I took a different path again into sports product design and really liked it there as well.
Cool. Um, so all right, we do engineering. Um, Getting to the end of engineering, and you're like, where can I go with this? Google search, University of Oregon product design. Were you already locked in on doing a master's, or um, were there any other programs that you were interested in, or did you hear about it and you're like this is what we're going for? What was the thought in going into the master's program?
So my junior year, all the engineering majors, junior year at George Fox, they go and do this course called servant engineering. And so basically, you get assigned to a team with a couple other engineers, and you get given this project and you work on it. And it's supposed to be somehow like positively impacting your community. And you can kind of like vote on different projects that you're excited about, and then you get assigned. I was super excited that I got put on a prosthetics project. And so there was a couple different people that we worked with um, to try to design weightlifting prosthetics. So people who had limb differences, who maybe couldn't like hold a weight because they didn't have a fully formed hand or something like that. And we built a couple different prosthetic devices to interface with the body and then also interface with the weight so that they were able to do maybe like hold a dumbbell or try to do a pull up or things like that. And seeing the ability that like a product had to make an athlete's life better and like it was a very human connection. That was something that I think really, really inspired me, and I loved that project.
Mm.
And then senior year, I was working more on like medical devices, which I thought was going to be really cool and is really cool, but there was such a lack of that like human connection, and I think that sport connection where I was like, this is just not as exciting to me. I don't think this is something I want to be doing long term. I don't see a lot of other like sport like connection kind of like jobs out there. I didn't know how to get into it. And so one of my professors, Chris Sharp, he I didn't even take any classes with him. I was a TA for him, and he was super into, actually he knew about your program, the
Mm.
outdoor sport product design program at Utah, and he was like, "Oh, like I know about this undergrad program. I don't really know about any other programs, but like I want to help you like figure out how you can be involved in this world." And so he encouraged me a lot to like do a bunch of Googling and like do some networking. And he's like, there's a bunch of different pathways you can take, but like maybe grad school is a good option. And so
Yeah.
I also, like, I graduated in 2020, so there was not a whole lot of job options, but I found
Tough
the
time in life,
program.
right?
Yeah, I found the program and I was like, I guess if I get in, I should go. And if I don't get in, I'll find something else. And so I didn't have a lot of, I'm a big planner and I didn't have a lot of plans. And I got in and I was like, I guess I should go. Like, I don't, there's nothing else out there for me, no other opportunities right now. And so I kind of ended up in the program and had kind of like applied on a whim, I guess, which is like kind of odd for me. Um, and wasn't really sure about it, I would say, for the first maybe like almost year. Like up until we took Footwear Studio, I was like, I don't know that I should be here in this program. And then I fell in love with footwear and was like, yeah, I think I want to be here and I like what we're doing and I think there's a future for me in this career option.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool. Did so within the first year of the program, because footwear was the last semester of year one, right? Um, what I guess what was kind of your so I guess to lay a background on if I mean I've talked about it a little bit in other podcasts, but if you're new here, welcome first off. But I've talked a little bit about like the structure of the program at the University of Oregon. So there was like the entry level like sewing courses and introductory courses to some 3D softwares. Um, and then we did apparel and
Yes.
we anyways, the first probably bit of the program was very introductory. Were you I guess what was your thought process as you were going through it and still trying to decide if it was right for you? What did it um was it just that like apparel or the other projects that we were doing like weren't exciting or what were you thinking?
Yeah. So, like you said, first quarter was like very much research was like our main class. And that class to me, like I knew how to do research, but I didn't necessarily know how to like make beautiful presentations. And
Yeah.
like I spent a little bit of time in like the Adobe suite, but not a significant amount of time. And so that class for me was like me spending hours upon hours trying to like figure out how to do graphic design like at a high level. And so that was just like an absurd amount of work for me to be like watching all these like Adobe Illustrator tutorials or like Photoshop tutorials or like asking like Brian or Matt or whoever like in our class to be like, hey, like, can you help my presentations be better? Or I met with our TA like Adam a ton and was like, hey, like I feel like my presentations look awful. Like yours look great. Can you help give me some tips? And so that was kind of what I focused on a lot that first quarter. And we did have introductory sewing and CAD classes, but luckily I previously knew how to sew.
Yeah.
I was like into sewing growing up, I guess. Like my mom had thought it was important that I learn how to sew with a sewing machine, which I think is a super valuable skill for everyone.
Totally.
And I've gone to like a sewing camp in like the back of a Michaels when I was like at 12 or something with a
That's
friend.
awesome.
Sewed random stuff, and so I knew how to sew decently well. Like I didn't know anything fancy, but I could sew. And then I'd also done quite a bit of CAD in engineering, not Rhino, so that was a new
Yeah.
program for me, but I knew like the basics of CAD modeling. And so that wasn't the most difficult, but like learning how to present and learning how to do graphic design was like hugely time consuming for me. And
I
then
forgot about that class, honestly. Yeah, that was
which
stressful.
for some people I think like in our class was a little bit of a breeze, like if you already knew how to do a lot of beautiful graphics. I think it was much easier, and then I think sewing was much harder for some people. Like it was so interesting seeing people from all the different backgrounds in our cohort come together and be like, this is really, really hard for me, but so easy for some other people. And it was really like, I think, good mix of skills where everyone could kind of help everyone if you were so inclined to like
Totally.
help, which was great. And then yeah, like apparel studio. I don't know. I think apparel's fun. I do like I love sewing and it's a good time. It just doesn't feel like something I want to do as my career, you know? Like it just never
Totally.
spoke to me in that way. And so I was like, that was when I kind of started panicking and I was like, oh my gosh, like am I gonna feel this way about everything we do in this grad program? It's like this is kind of fun, but like not what I want to be doing for my career. And so that's when I started panicking a little bit and was
Yeah.
like, oh no, what have I gotten myself into? Why am I here learning how to sew random stuff that's not, I don't know, meaningful to me for some reason? Don't know why it's not meaningful, but it's not like what I'm passionate about.
Yeah. But little did you know the best was yet to come.
Footwear. I loved equipment as well. Equipment was kind of cool, but footwear was just, I don't know, so intricate. Like I had never known how technical footwear was, and I think that's what I love is that blend of functional, technical, and aesthetic,
Yeah.
and kind of like how it comes together to really make a huge difference. Like millimeters in a midsole can make a huge difference to performance and comfort and athlete perception. And so all of those things that I had never realized were thought about in designing and manufacturing a shoe kind of like clicked in my brain as I started thinking about, oh, this is why I liked this certain footwear growing up, or this is why I didn't like this, and this is why my husband should wear this shoe because he has like this foot shape or something. And so it all started making sense. And I thought it was really, really cool and really interesting. And like that's kind of when I started being like, yes, I am passionate about this and I can't see a future career for myself in this realm.
Yeah. Yeah. I have well, one, I just think footwear is the coolest. So that's like that's what we're here for. No apologies needed to the apparel or other like accessory departments. But yeah, I think footwear is fun. Like you said, um, if like of just like general product design, it's like the perfect blend of hard goods and soft goods.
That's
As
so I
yeah,
completely agree. It's so interesting that you get all of the different parts of both in one.
right. So if you love like the cut and sew of apparel, like it's there. But if you love the um, I guess like the more intricate design details that you'd get in a hard good products, like you said, that like the millimeter is so important. Um, it's there as well. So it kind of like appeases every like sensation if you, I guess, if you like both. Um, one when okay, so the start, you're nervous at the program, um, but where it comes, it clicks. With your engineering background, once you like found like this desire with footwear and you're really excited about footwear, what were and obviously we'll get to like where you go after the program, but what was your initial thought on this is my background, this is what I'm learning, and this is what I want to do or would be open to doing in like a footwear job? Because I at least from what I remember, um, just to like pub Gabi for a second. Like one, you talked about just barely how presentations were really difficult and everything like that. By the end of the program, you were giving the most immaculate presentations, and had the most detailed, craziest projects. So not there was never a Gabi project that wasn't peak excellence, at least in my memory. But I remember as you were kind of like it felt like you got to a point to where you had learned the skills that you could do a lot of different jobs. Um, and yeah, I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you could have gone or done anything within the industry, right? So like, what was your thought process then as footwear is introduced to you? Like, where did you want to take it, and where did it go?
You're very kind. I think we did learn a lot of different skills in the program, and I think for me, I still don't always know like what people do at different companies, like right, like a developer at a startup's going to be doing something very different than a
Yeah.
developer at a big corporation, and so for me, I think I've always kind of been drawn to startups or like small teams where you get to wear a lot of different hats, which can be super hard sometimes. You end up wearing hats you don't always want to be wearing. But I also think that's where you get a lot of experience and a lot of um, breadth and the ability to work on different things. And so I think I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to go. I think I wanted to be able to be involved in a lot of different aspects, whether it was design, development, testing, um, more like line management work. There was a lot of things that I like being involved in, and every job or every like piece you're involved in has parts that aren't always the most fun. But I think for the most part, like my goal was probably to be on a smaller team or a smaller company doing a lot of different things was kind of what I started to focus on during that time. Because I didn't really have that answer of like I only want to do development or I only want to do design. I didn't quite know what I was gonna like. And then when we did our thesis, we kind of got to do. I mean, there wasn't a business part involved, but we got to do kind of all aspects of trying to bring a product from concept into like marketability and like kind of ready to launch into the market space. And so I liked almost all of the aspects of that.
Mm-hmm.
It was really hard, but there wasn't something that stood out to me there that was like, this is the only aspect of this product cycle that I want to be a part of for forever. And so I don't have like a specific role that I was excited about, but I was like, yeah, maybe like footwear for sure, and something along the lines of like product design, product dev, product testing is probably where I want to be in that realm.
Yeah. I honestly think that's like a pretty good uh like learning space. I don't know, for people interesting in listening, because uh it really is like, I mean, it's hard to know what you want to do without having done it, right? Is the
Yeah.
um and I think your thought process going into it is literally perfect, because there's no better place or way to learn than a small company, in my opinion, as far as like getting exposure to the whole process. Um, okay, so you're interested in the whole footwear sphere. No particular dart on a board yet. Um, so talk us through a little bit of like what. So how did you finish out the program? I know obviously, like you went into doing a footwear thesis. What was kind of your approach then to finishing out the program at the University of Oregon?
In between that summer, we were supposed to be thinking about what we were going to do for our thesis. And I feel like I was honestly pretty stumped. I was like, oh, I want to do footwear. And for our footwear course, I had done a project that briefly, like one of our short projects that focused on cleats for female goalkeepers that had like a 3D printed lattice kind of midsole inside. And I'm super passionate about women's sports, and specifically like soccer was my favorite sport growing up, kind of like we talked about earlier. And so I was like, okay, like that could be something I maybe like continue for my thesis. And I had been connected after our footwear studio with a company called Ida Sports, who I later went on to work for, but they were someone who I was thinking about maybe trying to like partner with for my thesis and see maybe they had a need that I could fill, but I didn't have any specific thoughts. And it was getting kind of close to when we were about to go back to school in September. It was August at the time, and our grad school kind of director, Susan, popped in like our group chat or something. Hey, there's this opportunity to work with sensors for your thesis. Is anyone interested? Send me a note if you are. So I was like, oh, like the opportunity to blend technology into my thesis project is something that I really wanted to do, and I think something that is like so hard to do on the timelines that we had if someone hadn't brought that technology to you already. And so I was like, okay, like this could be it. This could be
Yeah.
the perfect way to get experience in what I want to get experience in, but I don't have to do the technology side because that's not what this thesis is about for us. It would be more like the integration of technology, not the development of the technology. And so I hopped on a call with her and got some more information and kind of interviewed with the team that had built this shear sensor technology. And kind of together, we came up with a thesis project for me that would be mutually beneficial for both of us. And so they provided this shear sensor, and my goal was to integrate it into footwear to help evaluate shear force at the foot shoe interface instead of just like the shoe ground interface.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did this year-long thesis project on integrating this technology into footwear to theoretically help female distance runners run faster and longer through kind of real-time feedback of these forces. And historically, shear force is something that's super difficult to measure, especially in foot. It's easy to measure the vertical forces, but those horizontal forces of shear force are so much more difficult to measure. And so it was meant to be kind of like groundbreaking technology, which is really fun to be able to, I don't know, bring that into some
Yeah.
school focus to a certain extent, while also getting to do super fun like footwear design and footwear development that we did. Whoever did footwear did that on their own project as well. And so that's how I kind of weaseled technology into my shoe without having to do too much extra work, which I thought was awesome.
Interesting. So what was the outcome in the end? Did obviously you just talked through everything that you were trying to accomplish. How did like what was the result then? Did it function well? Were you able to get the numbers that the how did the research turn out? I guess is my more clear answer question.
The the theory was basically like integrating this sensor, like one worked a little bit with the sensor design team and development team to like make the sensor a little bit more compact in the ways that we wanted it to be compact. So while it maybe had more surface area, it was flatter to help be less perceptible to the athlete. And then the goal was like, how do I integrate this into a shoe imperceptibly, but also like in a way where it's going to get the correct readings or accurate readings from it. And so um, the answer was like basically piggybacking off of maybe what like a standard carbon plated running shoe would be. And
Yeah.
so adding like a little trap door for a sensor in like what would theoretically be probably like a molded TPU plate, and put the sensor in there so that the sensor is on a stationary kind of plane that you're measuring off of. And then we had some midsole. It was in the middle of the midsole. There was some midsole above it that was shearing, and that's where we were like measuring shear from. And then there was a plate where we were doing a reading from that was integrated into the insole or the sock liner. And so it was kind of like a three-part system that worked in harmony together where you were viewing one plane here that's moving, and this plane down here was kind of seeing the sensor and or viewing this pixel pattern that was moving and understanding how much shear had occurred, and then like doing some calculations in a like interface in order to relay that back to the athlete. And we found that while there's still like a lot of things to work out, like where's the battery going or how small can the battery be, um, and obviously like a lot of like if we were to actually manufacture this shoe, a lot of manufacturing complexities. But we got accurate data readings from the
Cool.
sensor that were actually telling us like, yes, this is how much shear is occurring, and we can measure it accurately and in real time and relay that feedback. And kind of figured that out through a few different testing methods, but it was really exciting. We ended up like patenting the research as well, which was cool. So I got on a patent really early
Nice.
on, which I think was sweet, which is officially published, which is why I can talk about it.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's actually out there now, which is great. But yeah, it ended up being like pretty successful. I don't know if the research is going any further. The team at University of Oregon was continuing to do research on the sensor because it's definitely like a novel sensor that they developed. But the theory behind putting it into footwear was successful and like could be really helpful for biomechanists doing research or like athletes who are wanting to like train at a much higher level and understanding of what's happening to their foot inside of the shoe.
That's awesome. And on the, I guess, along with successfully integrating into a shoe, you created and prototyped a beautiful trail running and road running shoe, right?
Yeah, so that was like there was the whole like technology side of integrating this sensor. That was kind of like half of the project that I worked on like with this team in Eugene, and then the other half was like kind of I would say what the main focus for the program was, which was creating road and trail shoes that had better traction, kind of like more supportive uppers for the female foot, was the other half, and then also like very aesthetically pleasing. And so that was kind of the other half of my goal that I think was also well accomplished. Um, and we built all of our samples by hand, which was insane in my opinion. Like I don't know how many hours you spent molding, but I spent a lot molding and a lot of failures of like, oh my gosh, my foam is just like bubbles and it has disintegrated. What happened? And the house I was staying with my parents and their house was too cold, and so I had to like crank up the heat
Interesting.
in their room because it was too cold. All of my foam like wasn't doing what I needed it to do, and so I cranked up the heat and I was like sweating while molding because everything was failing and it was too cold. It needed to be like 72 degrees instead of 65 or whatever it was.
Yeah. That's crazy. I just remember my when we had final presentations, um, my wife was like, Doug, like you did a great job, but like Gabby did an amazing job. It's like was just like, yeah, not to mention all of what you just described and the integration of the technology and finding successful readings there, but creating beautiful design and prototyping it and making an immaculate presentation. So
Maybe a little bit more time than the average person in our program to spend. Unlike you, I did not have a family and was not maybe like working a second job or like a job in school. And so I was able to kind of put way too much time into the various things that I did, which was probably looking back well spent, but uh, also could have spent maybe a little bit less time. It was a grind for sure, like to get everything to the level that I wanted it at. But I think, like I said, for me, like school was always about education and like trying to get to a career after the fact. And so I kind of like dedicated my whole life for those 2 years into grad school and like nothing else, in order to try to like get the career I wanted after, which I think looking back like was pretty successful, but man, it was tough. Like I'm sure you can agree. Like I really don't know how you did it with like a kid and a wife and a job and all those things. Like I felt very blessed to be able to just like only do school, which is definitely like a privilege to only do school for like those 2 years and not do too much else because it was an extremely time consuming program.
Yeah. Um, would you say, Gabby, that I guess then looking back on it, yeah, I mean, you kind of said it there, but thinking about the program for you, what I guess what you were looking to getting out of it, would you say that um, one, would you say you got what you were expecting? And obviously, like you learned new things, but you said even like considering quitting the program at different points. Like, would you say you got what you wanted out of the master's?
Yes and no. I think I had no concept of like what the program was truly going to be like going into it, and I think I learned way more than I thought. Um, And I think one of the biggest things I learned, which I actually learned a lot from you about, was like networking. I think one, like having a ton of great portfolio pieces is awesome. And I learned a lot of skills to like help me build those portfolio pieces, which did directly translate to like work I've done in industry. But the thing I think that's helped me the most in terms of like finding jobs or connecting with people has been networking, and it's something that I think is really hard. It's hard to go talk with people and be vulnerable and uh, message people on LinkedIn and have them not reply. Or uh, I think you were someone who I looked at as like the most positive networker ever. And you're just like, yeah, sometimes people don't reply and it's fine. Like, just shoot your shot and message people. Who cares? Like, either they're going to reply and you're going to have a great little convo for 20 or 30 minutes, or they're not going to reply and you're not going to connect with them. And that's okay too, because sometimes people don't see it, or they're busy, or they don't want to talk with students. But most people do want to talk with students and they're really lovely. And so I remember you just being so encouraging, like, yeah, don't worry about it. Just message people. And I was like, oh, like, I guess that's a good way to think about it. Like, I can just message people and reach out. And if they don't reply, I'll talk to someone else.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a mind switch for me, going from, oh my gosh, people don't want to talk with me, I shouldn't be reaching out, to if people don't want to talk with me, it's fine. I'll find someone else who does want to talk with me. And that was one of the biggest learnings, that I still network with people, and sometimes people don't want to talk to you and sometimes they do. And it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, networking is super powerful. I think having the backing of the program as you like attempt to like make a connection is helpful in like the conversation starter or like as a student I like one of the reasons why I think like I outside of like friendships and different portfolio pieces, but while we were there, it like just having moved to Oregon with the big like hub of people and being able to say the line like, "Hey, I'm a student at the University of Oregon. I'd love to learn more about what you do." Like that, I think that was also like helpful in networking. But yeah, like you said, networking in and of itself is just super powerful. Would you say? I I I I would imagine. In fact, I know, Gabby, people will be listening to this, um, and they're probably thinking to themselves like, "Is this a program that I should pursue?" Not even, I guess, like for yourself, but I, who would you think that the like getting a master's in sports product design would be most helpful for? Um, yeah, we could just say that.
Well, I'm very passionate about like, is grad school right for me? That as a question in general, I think is something people don't always fully consider. Is there so
Yeah,
much that goes into grad school in general. Like there's a huge opportunity cost of like depending on your program, you're going to go spend a bunch of money or you're not, you might get it paid for. But during that time, you're not really making money, most likely, compared to what your friends are going to be making who aren't in school or what you could be making. And you're kind of like putting your life not on pause. You're gaining new skills that can be really valuable, but you're going to be in a different spot in 2 years than like your friends who are going to be ahead of you. And that's something I think I really struggled with. I didn't have a ton of friends in grad school. I had friends I had made in my program, and I had maybe two friends outside of that who were in grad school, and the rest of all my friends just went straight into jobs. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm falling behind
Yeah,
in like savings or my experiences or whatever it was. And so, and still, like sometimes I feel like that, right? Like we
totally.
have who are buying houses or we had friends who were like getting married before us or things like that and which we still got married so young so it's so funny to say that but it just it felt so weird to be in a different spot than most of the people that I considered my closest friends and so I think it's something everyone should consider is like how much time am I going to spend here and am I okay being in a different spot than most people I know in like 2, 3, 4 years, depending on how long your grad school program is. But I think looking back, while it was hard and sometimes I questioned whether I should be doing it or not, I think it was worth it for me because I was someone who was looking for skills I didn't have that I wanted to grow. So, like making skills, presentation, graphic skills, design skills. I think it prepared me very well to be a designer in industry and even I would say to a certain extent like a developer in industry. Like those are two things that I felt pretty well prepared for in really like apparel kind of it wasn't really my jam so I didn't focus on it that much. Footwear like I felt pretty well prepared for entering into industry and equipment. I think because I also had the engineering background, like I could have gone that route as well had I maybe focused on it a bit more. And so I think if you need to learn skills, it's a great spot for you. Um, if you already have those skills and maybe you're just looking to boost your resume and build your network and you're willing to devote yourself to the program for a couple years, I think it's also a great spot. I think though, like a lot of people in our program where I was, and you were one of them even, where I was like, Doug already has all these skills. Is kind of what
Yeah,
it felt to me like there was a lot of people below us too where I was like, my gosh, you came from this incredible design program or you've already been in industry doing this work. And sometimes I wasn't sure like if the program was always the right fit for people who already had all the skills that I thought they needed or maybe had experience in industry already. And in that case, I think people were, which I don't know if that's true for you. Like, I'm sure you learned a lot in the program, but there were some people who are like, do you already have the skills you need and you're just here to network and put a degree on your resume? I don't know that I'd recommend the program for those people. I think at that point it's a personal choice, right? But I think, um, I don't know, I think about it more heavily then. But if you need to learn skills and you need networking and kind of like mentorship and help building a portfolio, I think it's a great spot for you.
yeah, yeah. I think that was really well said. And someone is sitting at home right now thinking, "Wow, that was really helpful." And now they're diving deep into their brain and like, "Do I need grad school? Like, what's the outcome that I'm trying to achieve?" Yeah, for me, like you said at the start, like this was all like COVID, right? And when we started, and even I guess myself having a design background, it was still like a good opportunity. I always say I would never change anything. And I think uh at least for me, it was just time to continue to like develop skills and enhance them and like learn new softwares or different things like that. But yeah, I I also just like I guess what you led off with of like, is grad school right for me? Like, will I feel like I'm behind compared to friends and different life things? Like, I think that aspect alone people don't consider often, you know? And that's something, yeah, even still now, I think about, even though I wouldn't change it and I think it was the right decision. It's like, yeah, it's you put yourself in a different stage of, like, I guess your direct peers from undergrad or whatever, right?
Which can be, like you said, like totally fine and can be the right path for you and still be a hard thing to think about. Because I
Yeah,
still think about it too. It's like, wow, like I feel like I'm in a different spot. Like I have friends who've been in the same job for 5 years. I've been, I've switched jobs, but I've been in the same job for like 2 years. And so it's just different to be like, oh my gosh, you've been there for so long and you've gained so many skills. And to just kind of like, I don't know, comparison is the thief of joy, but like
totally.
it's different for everyone now.
Yeah. Okay, I that was thought provoking, and I like it. Let's step forward though. To summarize, I'm speaking for you here, but an excellent job, um, in doing amazing work and amazing thesis. Um, then you already, I guess, foreshadowed where things go from there. But what's your process then? Graduate school, like, how many applications are you submitting? Where are you looking at? Like, what's your process in getting into your first position in the footwear industry?
Yeah. So I'm gonna take you back to the summer in between. So our grad program was 2 years. The summer in between, I I was applying for internships, and so I thought that that summer was going to be pretty crucial to me getting my first step into the sports product industry. So I'd previously worked as an engineer in like medical device industry, but I'd never had any experience in sports product. And so my goal for that summer was not necessarily to get into footwear. I did not have any sort of um, design portfolio for apparel, footwear, anything. I don't feel like I had a great portfolio at all. And so my thought was, in order to step foot into the industry, I'm going to try to get a role as an engineer, but at a sports product company, just to like get something on my resume and be in that industry. And so I ended up working at Specialized Bicycle Components, not doing something necessarily that I wanted to do, or maybe that was like not the best company fit for me, but I got something on my resume and I think that was super helpful for me. So like that was my first step, was like
Yeah.
first step one, get into the industry, even though it's not a company I want to be at, not a job I want to do, but it's something. And then that next year, so like I said, I had been networking with a lot of people, connecting with different companies, and one small company that I could connected with was Ida Sports, and they do women's specific, they'll call them football boots, but soccer cleats for us nerds on in North America. And
Yeah.
so uh, that was something I was super passionate about. I'd connected with um, one of the founders there, and Laura Youngson, and she just was so cool and so passionate and so inspiring. And so I just tried to stay tight with her a little bit. And she reached out at one point and said, hey, we have this opportunity for an internship. You have to apply for it um, in order to get the funds. And so there was this company, they're no longer existing, is my understanding. I don't fully know, but they it's called Women in Sports Tech, and so it was this company that would basically like give out money to small companies or help connect larger companies with women in the sports industry for various different job types, mostly in sports tech, so like data scientists, things like that. Think at like Aura Ring or something like that, kind of jobs in that realm. But Ida Sports had previously done an internship with them where WIST, Women in Sports Tech, had helped pay for their intern for the summer. And so I did like a self-proposed product project proposal to WIST of me working with Ida for the summer, and it was accepted. And so I basically like got my internship with the small company paid for in order to have funding to be their intern for the summer, and got to do footwear design and development with them as an intern for the summer. And it was awesome. It was super cool to see how a lot of the things I had learned in the program about footwear design actually applied in industry. Um, and got to work on some color design for them and some new cleat plate designs and upper patterns and all this stuff. Not all, most of it got killed. I'll say that. Most of it didn't make it out the door, which is totally fine. A bunch of their new stuff is absolutely incredible stuff that I didn't get the opportunity to work on, but they are doing some really cool stuff, and it's just fun to be a part of a team that was really passionate about what they were doing. And because it was a startup, a really small company, I got to see kind of all the facets of footwear design and development, like we talked about earlier, and be a part of all these different processes instead of just one.
Yeah. The was the so you said WIST, you had to essentially like pitch them first. Was what you pitched to them what you ended up working on?
So, yes, mostly no. So it was kind of like, hey, like here's this dream project that I want to work on with them. And we worked on a small part of it, but most of what did was like more generic, typical, like day-to-day stuff that the company needed on their inline projects. And then that kind of project I had pitched was more of an innovation project that I helped kick off, um, but the main focus of my time. And then after about 3 months as an intern there, um, I really liked my time. I think they really liked having me, and so I got offered a full-time contract position, and so I contracted with them for a few more months until I switched things up and did something in person, because all of my work with them was remote, and they're lovely and awesome and doing great work, but it's really hard to work remote. I think especially coming off of COVID, I wanted to be in person with people, and for once in like 4 years, we hadn't been in person for so long, and so I switched things up. They were awesome, and it was great to. I think it's an easier transition to go from intern to full time, especially
Yeah.
at small companies, and so that was kind of my path into like a full time position with them.
Maybe we jumped past it. I think you had said that there was a connection to a connection, but how did you uh I've like so you said one of the founders told you about the potential of an internship. I guess what was your process in initially just connecting with them? Um,
We did Footwear Studio. I did a female specific soccer cleat design, and in my presentation to industry professionals, I voiced that no one was doing female specific soccer cleats. And one of the industry professionals kindly corrected me and was like, there's actually one company I know of doing it. You should meet them. And so her name's Nicoline. I don't know, you might have seen her. She does like a
yeah.
bunch of cool like CAD footwear stuff. She was like, you need to meet them. And she connected me to Laura and Ida Sports and was like, this is Gabi. She's really passionate about the work that you're doing. She didn't know that you were doing it. Like, you guys need to meet and connect. And so we connected. And then almost half a year later, Laura reached out and was like, hey, we've had success with doing an intern with WIST before. We would love you to consider doing an internship with us. And so it ended up working out. But I definitely like you talked some about what was your like application process. So I applied to the internship with Ida Sports pretty early on. Like I think I heard back around winter of our second year, and so got the internship and was like, I'm not gonna look anywhere else. I really want to do this internship. And then sometime after I was full time with them, decided I wanted to do something else. And so I have had the joy and the unfortunateness of applying to a bunch of different positions and interviewing a ton and getting a lot of no's or maybe and then no and things like that. And so I definitely understand the pitfalls of applying to a lot of different things and not hearing back or hearing sadness back. So I've had that experience as well.
The application process is the worst. I think it's a there's got to be some way to make it better, you know?
Yeah, I when I was going through it all, I was talking to my husband and was like, man, it just feels like kind of like a breakup whenever you get done with when you get through a rejection, right? Like you have put all this time and energy into this relationship and you start to imagine yourself like in your future together, right? Of where you're going into work every day and like what am I going to wear to work and what am I going to work on? Maybe I think about it way too much more than like the normal person, but like I would imagine myself at these jobs and I convinced myself every time I was like this is my dream job. Like I really really want it and I sometimes I would get to like final round and man, I had some really awful interviews where like or like experiences where you get to final round and you wait 3 weeks and you don't hear anything, so you give the recruiter a call or an email and then they leave you a voicemail and it's like, oh yeah, we cut budget for this role after you interviewed 6 times over 3 months. Sorry, we never told you we're not hiring for this role anymore. Good luck.
Oh man.
And so like just like things like that where it's like, okay, I guess they cut budget. Or like, oh yep, we went with an internal candidate or we went with someone else. Or like you're not the right you've heard all the lines, you're not the right fit for the role, but like
Yeah.
apply for something else, try this other job. And so it it's hard, it's discouraging, but anyone listening, you'll get something. It ends up working out at some point. So you just got to stick with it and try not to be, I think, try not to take anything personally. I think that was something I learned in the program as well. Like engineering is so objective and design is so subjective. So in engineering, there's always a right answer, and you just have to find that right answer. At least in school. In industry, it's different, but in school, there was always a right answer, and you just had to find it. And most of the time, you could find it. But in design, you might think you find the right answer, but then someone else thinks it's the wrong answer, and so they're right because it's always about like the professor's opinion or the industry expert's opinion. It's not always, you have to figure out how to appease other people's opinions in your work in order for it to be successful, which was so hard and is still so hard. And I think learning to take away, like, if people's negative feedback helps you make your work better, then I think it's you can find good takeaways. But if it's just negative, then try to kind of forget about it was my motto. And so
Yeah.
I was always trying to take people's negative feedback and find constructive ways to move forward instead of just being sad that someone didn't like what I did. And I tried to do the same in interview processes as well.
I actually very specifically remember you saying that. I think it was our first year, after we were all trying to like navigate the weirdness of like some like hard critiques that I think a lot of us were receiving. Um, and I just never forget you like that like very clear um well, comparison to like yeah when you're designing something um it's very opinion based, right? Like there may be certain things that aren't, which is why I always say I really like tech packs because when you, or like a blueprint, um, for something that's being molded, whether it's like an insole or outsole, midsole, because that's like the one time in design where you're taking the design and it you do find like the exact correct answer, you know? Like this is the literal millimeter that it needs to go to. But yeah, the with everything else, it's like um, your opinion versus mine, and who's more passionate and or more senior or whatever, right? or done the most research. What would you say, Gabby, between your current job that you have now, or your job at Ida Sports, or anything that you've even just learned through different application process? Like um, what would you say someone applying to this industry, like what do you want to have, whether it's in your portfolio or your job application tool belt? Like um what's the method to success there?
Yeah. I think you and Brian talked about it a couple episodes back, maybe episode 2. Um, that being a good person and being a great teammate is something that helps a lot. I remember you guys talked about it, people came into our classes like, what's the one rule to success? And they're like, be a good person to work with. Don't have an ego or have a bad attitude. Just be great to work with, and that'll get you a long way. And I think that's super true. And the other one I would say is being passionate and excited about the job that you're interviewing for. I think Emily and I have talked about this before. Is sometimes we've gone into jobs that were maybe for like a development role, and at that time we were really excited about design and made the mistake of telling the people we were interviewing with that like our dream job would be being a designer instead of being like a senior developer.
Yeah.
Always like when you're interviewing for a role, not that I would recommend like ever lying about your experience, but like maybe boosting your enthusiasm for the role itself and saying like if you see yourself on a career path, it's the senior level of the job you're interviewing for. It's not any other job anywhere else. It should be like a senior level role of that exact job on that team. I think is what's going to help you have the most success. Maybe it's not the most honest, but like that's what's going to help you get in the door. People don't want to hire you and train you just to have you leave in like a year to go do what you actually want to be doing. They want to be building a good team of good people who want to stick. And so like I think that's something that can help you out is like enthusiasm for the job you're applying for. And
Oh,
sometimes you fake it till you make it.
that's a great point, Gabby. I like really good. The so when I left the program, I got a job at Black Diamond, and I've had multiple opportunities to like interview interns or other like entry level positions. I actually, my first day on the job at Black Diamond, I was in an interview for who would be my future manager, which was like really weird to be a part of that on the first day. Um, but I think footwear, and obviously this is just like what I know, right? But footwear in my brain is like just cool, and people like has become popular, and people in the design or the development space, um, I like shoes, and I want to work in the footwear industry. So if there's a job, I'm going to apply to it. And so have interviewed a lot of people that even just like very candidly were like when I was at Black Diamond specifically, and we're working on like climbing shoes, hiking boots, um, and just like everything in that space. And it's like, oh, like my dream job's at Nike, or I just love shoes, and like candidly, like they're just like, this is an open position. It's like that's just like not what you should say, because if even if you have great work, um, like well, actually, when uh we were going to hire someone, then it was like we had some budget cuts too. But we were um I have experience of like they're like great candidates that honestly said that it was like I'm not really passionate about Black Diamond, but I want a job. And then there's like a worse candidate that's like super passionate about the job and has like the minimum required skills. It's like that's the person we're gonna give it to, you know?
I don't love dishonesty, but like you should you should probably be dishonest if that's like the case that you're in is where you're like not excited, or you should be applying somewhere where you are passionate, right? Like
Right.
that's kind of like I don't think people want to hire people who don't want to be there because then when you get there, no matter how qualified or experienced you are probably not going to do as good of a job as the person who wants to be there every day and is passionate about learning and growing, and especially like growing your skills in that sector of the industry. And so I think, yeah, it's hard. Like, that's why people don't get jobs. It's because you're honest, too honest sometimes.
Yeah. And I guess that's not like you said, like you should be honest with yourself too if you're applying to something that you don't want. But I guess, yeah, we're not advocating for a lack of honesty, but more pushing for, yeah, just I guess like passion, excitement about what you're applying towards. I have a I don't my office is like this little nook in my garage, and so it's not heated. So I have these little like space heaters. As you can tell, I'm wearing a down coat.
I see the down coat. It's probably
Um,
very cold in Utah.
yeah, it's chilly. This my one space heater just like turned off. I'm actually like pretty toasty right now, but there's a like random note. Could you hear the sound coming through? I can take out the background noise, but
I
it
can't hear it
just
at all. That's just because I'm sitting next to, I'm sitting like against our only non-busy wall. I actually took a painting down behind me in order to like have a clean wall behind me, but I'm
nice.
sitting right next to our wall heater and it turned on a while ago, so I hope you couldn't hear that as well.
Oh no, I didn't notice. Um, we can keep this conversation in or take it out. It's maybe people listening up to this point. This is kind of fun.
Maybe it's
Um,
relatable.
yeah. Okay, Gabby. Last question. We'll maybe yeah. Last question. So, um, Brian said in his um interview that I needed to ask you about your literal blood, sweat, and tears. Could you tell the listeners back home, like why would he be so poignant about blood, sweat, and tears in the program at the University of Oregon?
Yes, well, I think sweat and tears, those are a given, right? Like, of
Yeah,
course, you're gonna I sweat while molding my stuff in my 72-degree parents' house for multiple hours. Tears, that's a given. Some harsh feedback at various times and crushing deadlines. But blood is a little maybe atypical or supposed to be.
yeah,
It was, I think we were like maybe like 2 weeks out from maybe like 4 weeks. I don't know. But I was working on my final prototypes for our thesis project, and so, like we mentioned before, we did all of our prototyping by hand. So I had molded my midsoles, and now I was working on my upper. I didn't have like the most experience sewing uppers, and but I knew what I was doing. I was making like 8 uppers because I was supposed to have 2 pairs of shoes. Um, But then I also had to make 4 pairs because I had two for our thesis final, but I had two that I had to give to the sensor team for additional testing. So I was making 4 pairs, 8 shoes, so 8 uppers total. And I was sewing on some like lace stays. I had decided to do like this little like micro paracord that I was doing like a kind of like aggressive button stitch across to stitch down to my uppers. And I guess I was just zooming along with the sewing and wasn't paying attention or hit the pedal too hard and sewed right over my finger,
uh,
needle through the finger, thread through the finger. And I remember I was like, my finger was on the needle on the sewing machine, and I was just like, oh my gosh, what have I done? I think I screamed something or whatever, and so a couple people came over, and Gemma and Bryant were very nice and helped me quite a bit. But I remember like sliding my finger off the needle
oh my
and like
gosh.
pulling it out, and there was a thread like through my entire finger. And so I
Uh,
was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And so Gemma helped me cut the thread, and I like pulled it out of my finger, and it started bleeding, and it didn't hurt that bad. It hurt. I didn't hit
Through
bone or
the
anything
fingernail? Is
through
that?
the fingernail, but just
Oh
like
man.
just the tip through the fingernail, out the finger pad. It was just shocking. It was shocking. It wasn't needed. I didn't. I had so much more to do. Um, but they bandaged me up. I took some Advil, went back to work, but much
Kept
more peacefully,
grinding.
kept grinding. Um, maybe went home a little early that day, or a little earlier than I should have, but yeah, went back to work after and tried to be more careful in the future. I think Brian Lau also took out his finger on a sewing machine as well a little bit. So I was not the only casualty.
Okay. I forgot about Brian Laus, but when Brian Rotman said yours, it reminded me. But man, yeah, that's terrible. I'm gonna have to put like a not for kids on like the on YouTube or whatever, like a gore censor scory. No,
Yeah. It was, and then when I got home, my dad thought it was funny. My mom was like, "Are you okay?" My dad was like, are you okay? Did you get a photo?" Like he was upset I didn't have a photo of like the needle through my finger or anything. And now looking back, I'm upset. I also don't have a photo, but
yeah.
it was a good and safety when you have late nights or early mornings. Um, Sign the waivers so that people get people to sign waivers if they're visiting you so they don't sue you. But yeah, good times. Glad I am no longer injuring myself doing projects.
Oh, totally. I can think of many times, and I think since working in industry, I've only done this maybe once or twice, but where like in the middle of sewing, you're like shaking. It's like 3 in the morning. I would just I'd lay on the floor next to the sewing machine and set like a 30-minute timer, and then like try and like take a 30-minute nap and then wake up. The grind was crazy.
Well, yeah, I never hit it that hard, but there was definitely times where I was like, I've messed up the same thing like 5 times in a row. It's time for bed because I'm just gonna keep making mistakes and making things worse.
Yeah.
No, there was definitely some nights where it was like I need to do more, but I'm gonna wake up early and do it. I'm too tired right now to actually make good progress.
A smart choice.
Well, you took
Oh,
a nap. The nap's a good one. I can't nap really. If I'm going to bed, I'm going to bed, and then I should just be asleep for at least 2 hours before I wake up. I can't do the whole 30-minute thing.
yeah. I don't know that it's like super effective, but yeah, it did work a couple times. Um, okay, Gabby, that was an excellent story. This is so the very last thing. I had texted you this, so now I still have to ask you. You are a true Portlander. So many people listening will be, if they don't already live in Oregon, or the Portland area, or at least considering or interested in it, or would live there. They got a job. Um, Hit us with like your top two or three recommendations, whether it's an activity or a food thing, something to get excited about Oregon.
Yeah, I think Portland specifically, or the surrounding areas.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't. I think you have great access to a lot of different outdoor scenery. So you're like hour and a half to 2 hours from the beach, from the Pacific Ocean, which is gorgeous. We have some amazing beaches. My
yeah.
favorite
Amazing.
is Cannon Beach. Pacific City Beach is also great. You're like an hour from the gorge, which is amazing. Columbia River Gorge, incredible hikes there. Um, or you're like an hour and a half from the mountain, Mount Hood. You can go ski if you're into skiing, or there's incredible hiking, snowshoeing. And so I just think we're surrounded by so much beauty in the Oregon atmosphere. Um, there's like three like huge big kind of things you could do, but also like right in the city is Forest Park and like incredible like hiking in the city or um, just like everywhere you look is gorgeous and green and there's incredible parks. And so I think that's one of the biggest perks in my opinion is one, we have pretty mild weather, so you can really like be outdoors whenever you want if you're okay with a little bit of rain. It doesn't rain that much here.
Yeah,
And then
I can attest.
yeah, it's just gray. That's the big thing is it's not that sunny for a good part of the year, but it's not that rainy. And then because we have mild weather, you can be outdoors all the time if you want and like get to explore some really beautiful places, which I love.
Okay. I think I too think that is probably like the best sales pitch. If you enjoy nature, you know. Um,
Are great restaurants. I would say like my husband and I are pretty boring when it comes to like we eat at the same places all the time that like are maybe a little bit more chainy and a little bit less classic Portland. So I'm not the best person to ask for recommendations on that, but Portland does have great food from what I've heard.
Food and nature. I think those are yeah, the I would agree. Like being someone who grew up in like the Rocky Mountain area, you know, like the um being able to still access mountains but being so close to the coast, like the thing like some of my best memories while I was there were like playing fetch with my dog on the beach. I don't know, like just like it was just like great uh nature access. But cool. Okay, Gabby. Well, I've taken enough of your time. Um, and I guess do you have any final send off words for the people, or has it all been said?
I just think you're so lovely, Doug, and I'm stoked that you're doing this podcast. And I think I hope there's like people out there listening who are excited to learn from you and kind of like the people that you interact with because I think when I think back to all the questions that I had as like starting the program or kind of finishing the program, I think this podcast would have helped me. And so I'm glad that you're doing it because I think there's so many people out there trying to figure out what their next step is or, oh my gosh, I feel stuck right now. And so to hear the stories from people who have been in industry and like have taken a similar path, I think this is going to be really helpful. So I'm stoked and I hope your monthly subscribers only grow.
Okay, well, I bet we'll get two more after this one. That's kind of like our average per pod. But no, thank you. I too. I mean, I this is like selfishly just a fun thing for me. I love connecting and obviously I love my friends. So this is awesome. But yeah, I think you're gonna get some LinkedIn requests for sure. Probably like four job offers on the door. So um, no, but uh, thank you for joining. Thank you for your time. I'm gonna stop recording, and we can chat for still a second. But for those watching, enjoy the rest of your life.